Cool. Good evening, everybody. I just want to leave it just another couple of minutes because there were a few issues with getting this up and running. We've got a few more people who've signed up. I know from experience that not everybody will join us, but I just want to give them the opportunity to. So we'll carry on chatting, and just give them a couple more minutes to join.
Yeah. What's everyone drinking?
I thought it was only me that was having a cheeky gin, but I just think it's a respectful time to start.
Yeah. Oh, totally. I mean, past midday is a respectful time to start. It's it's gone 6:30. You're well within your right to be consuming alcohol.
Well, my partner Sue, she works for William Grant, the distiller. So to be honest, we get a hefty amount of booze as part of our pay packet, which feels really old-fashioned, but at the same time, amazing.
What do they distill? I mean, is it gin?
They own Glenfiddich, Balvenie, Hendrick's Gin, that sort of thing. Yeah, they're I guess they're quite interesting in that they're obviously enormous, but they're still family run.
Yeah.
So they're quite unusual in that respect. I don't think there's many companies, certainly not in Scotland, that turn over 800 million a year but are run by a family. The Colonel had a lot of foresight back in the day, and also their big shtick, which they're quite proud of course now, is when Prohibition came in the United States, they doubled their production to feed
black market,
to feed the bootleg market. Yeah, that was their big gambit, and essentially that's what propelled them into the sort of brand. And of course, these days that's become quite cool, that sort of thing. But I mean, I imagine as long as HRMC gets its cut, they don't particularly mind where it goes.
Yeah, true. We Phoebe and I, we were in Leeds for 4 years, and there was this awesome speakeasy bar. And obviously, Prohibition, long gone, alcohol totally legal, but it was basically a barbershop. And so by day, it was a legitimate barbershop, which was 3 either side, big red leather chairs, and hairdressers working.
Did you have to kind of meet a shady character outside? Did you?
Yeah, by night.
They did that.
By night, you literally had to sort of queue up and almost sort of give the password to get in.
Back
to the barbershop and down 2 flights of stairs, and it was a jazz bar. Just
they did something similar in Glasgow. Yeah, you had to meet a kind of nefarious looking character on the street, and you get kind of ushered in. It's cool. I mean, it's just a gimmick, right? But I mean, it makes the night out more interesting. And of course, actually, right now, nights out feel, well, to be honest, any night out would feel pretty special.
Yes.
I would kill for a night on Sauchiehall Street. I mean, just the names of some of the establishments. There's a bar there called Nice and Sleazy.
I know Sleazy,
which might sum me up, or it sums up the location. But on Seamus's piece there, I'm just finishing off a Whiskey Mac or a Whiskey McDonald after Colonel McDonald, because actually, if you have a nondescript whiskey, or should I say blend, then actually add some ginger wine and it makes it more palatable. So that's what I'm doing. A little bit cold here.
I feel like I should pour myself a whiskey. I mean, you guys are on it. I think maybe it's time.
Well, before you do that, David, let's make you earn it, shall we?
Thanks. Yeah, all right. I'll stick to my water bottle for now.
Just for now. Okay, so welcome. We just had someone else join us. So welcome, Harriet, and welcome to. There's a few people here I know. There's clearly Team Ebsworth is in the house, which is great to see, and a couple of old hands led by Rupert, calling in from a surprisingly sunshiny Scotland with his deer. So my name's Fiona Galbraith. I have been hosting these rural lists. This is the 20th one now. We've been going for 2 years. It's something we host as part of Rural Link. I left the army 3 years ago, and since then I've increasingly become involved in supporting the transition of service people into the wide range of land-based careers. And I'm delighted that you have chosen to join us. I am recording this and I'll edit it slightly so that it's available for people to watch back. There is a YouTube channel for Rural Link. I don't pay anyone professionally to edit it, so it's not full of beautifully well produced things, but there's a lot of content on there, and please do let people know that that's there, or investigate it yourself. And what we do with Rural Link is run these rural lists. We also run quarterly Insight Days, Rural Careers Insight Days. The next one's on the 25th of February. And the one after that is on the 27th of May, both of which are planned as online events at the moment. We are trying to set up bespoke training, notwithstanding every time we set anything up, the things move at the moment. We're looking at a campsite diversification project, which will talk about planning and considerations for diversification projects focused on campsites, which we hope to run later in the year. The rural business course that was supposed to debut last May, we're looking at a date of October. That's a 2-week course, payable broadly through one ELC hit for those who are resettling. As well as bespoke training, I spend a lot of my time, and particularly this last year, I spent a lot of my time coaching individuals, which I'm very happy to do. I don't charge any fee for service personnel who are looking for coaching and support as they leave the forces, and I enjoy that, do a lot of that. But the real thing that Rural Link wants to do, and we are increasingly able to do, is build sustainable career pathways. So we're linking with businesses that are big enough to offer sustainable pathways. Today I was contacted by a large private estate in Malvern, and it looks like we're going to set up a horticultural pathway with them, which we'll investigate when it's legal for me to go down and see them. We have a large number of businesses now who offer civilian work attachments, which is the first real tangible step into gaining the experience and links into a new career. We're also increasingly offering job service. For example, today I've got a role come in for a project manager in Gloucestershire to run a 3-year fixed term contract, which is a perfect gateway job. So there's a lot going on, and I'm very glad that this is one of those things. So with that, Team Ebsworth, very happy to welcome David Ebsworth, who's as I've described him, a serial foodie entrepreneur, trained as a chef, and I've met because he's now working on his MBA as he takes his career into the next place. But he wants to tell you his story as part of what he's going to talk to us about, and I hope that it will go a great way to what I try to do with these meetings. No pressure, Dave, is to inform, but particularly to inspire those who are looking for the next career. So thanks very much for your time. We are all ears.
Well, thank you, Fiona, for quite a wonderful introduction. I mean, what a bio. And I don't consider myself a serial food entrepreneur. I think I've had a hand in a couple of interesting startups, and that's about it, really. But thank you, and thank you for taking the time to listen to me tonight. So, yeah, start at the beginning, I suppose. So I am effectively just an experienced chef, a chef that's decided to go back to school. I've been sourcing sort of local organic produce for pretty much the last couple of decades, you know, on the pretense, on the understanding that it tastes great and is just fabulous for flavour. I've decided to take a couple of years out, so I'm actually just taking 2 years out to reflect and learn, mostly about agriculture. So I've been on the receiving end of this beautiful produce for 20 odd years, and it's time for me to swim upstream a little bit and work out how it's produced and why. Now, hopefully, you know, during and post this 2 years of academia, I'll be able to hopefully design some innovative ways to disrupt our unsustainable food system. As it stands, it's pretty broken. So I'm just going to take, you know, I mean, there's only a small group here, so I'm happy just to take questions as and when. So if at any point you feel like unmuting and interrupting me, then please do. Like we're a nice breakout room size that we can have a bit of a dialogue rather than me just monologue at you for the next 60 minutes. So please do at any point interrupt me, and I'll field some questions. But yeah, so food has kind of always been my life. I've been incredibly, since I can remember, I've been incredibly passionate about eating. And I think that sort of slowly transpired into a love of learning techniques and ways of cooking. And I've been very thankful. Actually, my mum is here tonight. You can see David Ebsworth, she's there. She's always cooked whole foods. Always, you know, fresh meals on the dinner table from a very young age. So I'm very grateful to her. I kind of went through academia thinking that I would, you know, be a businessman. I had no idea really. I had loads of ideas, maybe be a policeman, maybe go into the military, maybe, who knew? But I always thought of catering as kind of my beer money. So at 13, 14, I was peeling potatoes in the local hotel. And that wasn't my beer money at 13, 14. Sorry, that was pocket money. But so from a very young age, I was sort of in the restaurant scene and really enjoying the camaraderie in the kitchen. And this was always for me. Hi Ian, how you doing? Thanks for joining us. This was always for me a kind of a hobby that I was lucky enough to be paid for. So I actually ended up going through GCSEs, A-levels, you know, working evenings and weekends, and as I said, you know, cooking was my beer money through my A-levels and then through my degree. So I actually studied systems engineering at university and was part of the OTC, which was awesome. So you guys, I'm sure, would be familiar with that. But yeah, I kind of always had this was my hobby, and this was something that I really enjoyed doing, and I just felt lucky that I could take some money for doing it. So actually it was an escape for me from academia. You know, I was sort of studying systems engineering. I didn't really get on with my peers. I found everyone just a little bit geeky, and actually I hung out with the environmental scientists and the ecologists, and I just, you know, I'd spend more time either on a sports pitch playing rugby or in the bar with the environmental scientists getting drunk than I would really looking at programming and systems engineering. So yeah, I kind of went through academia and popped out the other side, and I had a bit of a fork in the road. You know, I sort of trained to become this systems analyst. Do I go down the systems analyst route? And I managed a few months as a systems analyst, thinking that I could go into companies, and I was going into companies and writing technical specs. So I was talking to clients, finding out what they wanted, talking to their employees, mapping out what their employees were doing. I was then writing a technical specification and then passing that on to the programmers to effectively make the guys that I'd built a rapport with and were pulling information out of redundant. And that didn't really sit well with me. So after spending quite a long time in kitchens, I found myself longing for going back in and getting back part of a team and cooking good food. As I said, like my love for food and my love for eating. experiencing good food was a huge part of my life. So I sort of had this sort of fork in the road. Do I continue down this sort of weird systems engineering path that I've carved myself? Or do I sort of back out and start again and go into catering full time? Because before it had just kind of been a hobby. So do I do this? And if I do this, I felt like I kind of wanted to do it right. You know, I thought, well, if I'm gonna back out of this sort of potentially high earning career route and then make this decision to go into catering full time, what do I want to do? So I started chasing stars. I traveled a lot. I spent a lot of time in Southeast Asia, and Australasia, and France, and I cooked in some awesome places. And I was lucky to be part of a team of 6 in Marlow, actually near London. That we were awarded a Michelin star, 8 out of 10 out of the Good Food Guide, and 5 AA rosettes, which it just felt like, you know, yeah, this is great. I'm learning these techniques. I'm getting stuck in, and I understand food. I understand what people want, and it's great. And then I sort of had this moment, maybe sort of 3 or 4 years into this journey of choosing the catering fork. Sorry, I'm gonna have a sip of my mouth again. I had this moment of disenchantment where I suddenly kind of realized, after being part of wonderful teams and the camaraderie and the fun and the excitement, and you know, feeling like we're smashing it out of the park, we're cooking high-end cuisine, you know, the techniques we're applying to these wonderfully locally sourced produce is gaining traction. We're getting awards, we're winning things. It felt good being part of that team. I suddenly had this real sudden acknowledgement that, you know, the energy that was going into these plates of food was bonkers. You know, we'd be taking you know, a whole pig carcass. Good evening, Chris. Do you mind muting, mate? Sorry, thank you. You know, we'd be taking this whole pig, and we'd be butchering it down on site, and we'd be creating this wonderful brine. So it'd be full of, you know, pink Himalayan salt, black pepper, really nicely sourced, mixed peppercorns, perhaps, cloves, bay leaves, and we'd be brining this half a pig. Maybe, let's say we took the belly, we'd brine it overnight. We then the next morning wash all that brine off. We'd then vac pack it. We'd then put it in a water bath. You know, we'd give it 24 hours in the water bath at 55 degrees. The following day, we'd then take it out. We'd open the vac pack. We'd get rid of the vac pack after washing the brine down the sink. We'd then take the bones off and we'd press it between 2 boards. You know, it would sit in the fridge for at least 6 hours, pressed, you know, with weights on top so that it was then a flat belly of pork. We then take our knives and we'd strip it into tiny little perfect cubes. You know, perfect. I mean, they would look banging. They'd then sit in the fridge on peach paper, so butcher's paper, sat in the fridge, ready to go for service. Someone then ordered this, you know, I mean, it would be a 30, 40 pound main course. Someone would order it. I'd then be on the stovetop, heating my pan, getting the butter foaming, you know, waiting for that foaming butter to turn to that nice, like you get that Maillard reaction where the butter starts to brown. And I'd be taking this perfect cube of pork belly and popping it in. And I'd be browning it on the bottom, and I'd flip it on its side, and then its side, and then its side, making sure it's caramelized the entire place. And there'd be a team of us, all, you know, there'd be 4 or 5 of us all getting this one dish to the pass. So I might be doing the pork belly and the lovely gravy. Someone else would be doing the veg. Someone else would be doing X. And we all come to the pass at the same time. But it was beautiful. But how much energy You know, how much friggin' effort was going into that one plate of food? And at the same time, you know, we had people in our restaurant paying 34 quid for this lovely pork belly dish. You've got people in, you know, developing countries that are barely getting $1 a day. And, well, they're scratching a living on $1 a day. They might even be going to bed hungry. And that hit me. It suddenly hit me. I got totally disenchanted with high-end cuisine. It was high energy, it was high waste, it was high stress. You know, what the hell was I doing? I'd taken this fork in the road. I decided not to go down the systems engineering route. I decided not to get that high, you know, big whack salary. I was doing something that I loved, but what was I doing? You know, what had I chosen? So I kind of had a bit of a step back, a little bit of a meltdown, right? Press pause. And I decided to take on a pub in Somerset. And at the same time, as I was climbing the ranks through my past sort of 5 years, I'd been mentoring MVQ level 2 and MVQ level 3 candidates. And I decided in taking on this pub that I was gonna basically try and become an assessor. So I signed up with Yeovil College and trained to become an assessor for MVQ2 level 2 and MVQ level 3. And it was a nice sort of downshift for me. It was a real change of gear, because going from those you know, really stressful, highly charged services where everything had to be perfect, you know, you never knew when a Michelin inspector or an AA guy were coming in, you know, an AA inspector were coming in. So every single plate had to be bang on. So it was a really quite a nice downshift for me, taking on this pub. And we made a play to basically sort of shake it up a little bit, in that, okay, so I could cook good food, but what else can we do? Right, I love music. Right, let's bring in some bands. So we were well out in the sticks, this little pub. It was called the Foresters Arms. And so we were a real destination pub. You know, we had no real town or city around us. We had to kind of get people to us. There had to be a draw. And I didn't feel like food was enough. So it wasn't that I didn't feel like I suppose I was struggling a little bit with quite what food was to me at that point. But I thought one way to really get people to enjoy this pub and what we were creating was to do ticketed events. So we used to get bands in, and we'd come up with a menu, and we'd come up with a drinks list. And so we combine an offering that encompassed music, possibly dancing, a menu, and a drinks list. So you'd pay a ticketed price. It might be 50, 60 quid, but you were coming to the Foresters Arms for an event. You were coming for an evening. You knew what you were buying into. And that worked really well. You know, we actually got quite a good reputation. I mean, the pub was derelict for 4 or 5 years before the company that I worked for took it on and decided to renovate and refurbish. And we managed to sort of spring onto the scene and get a real reputation for holding these events. We did a wonderful Cuban night. So we had a 5-piece Cuban band, and part of the ticket price was a 4-course Cuban meal. You got a cocktail on arrival and then drinks with your meal. And then we'd have the Cuban band, playing all evening until about 9 o'clock, where we pushed the tables back and we just danced salsa from 9 till 11. So it was an awesome vibe, and it was full of people coming together and connecting. And it just felt good. It felt right. After being in this sort of stuffy Michelin environment, suddenly doing this sort of interesting, quirky, you know, combination of things, felt like I was making some progress and doing good things. I still had this sort of hankering, or this thing in my mind that I was very much stuck in this time and space. You know, I was really enjoying the catering lecturer work. I was really enjoying the mentoring and the assessing. And I was actually going into schools 1 day a week, every Monday basically. I was going into schools and teaching a variety of age groups how to cook healthy food. So between the sort of the pub events and the catering, I felt like this was a really good thing I had. I'd sort of swapped out these ridiculously long hours for a nice mix of different stuff, but I still kind of wanted to sort of swap it out even further, in that I still felt like I was on this treadmill. I still felt like I had to keep going. You know, every Monday well, prior to Monday, I was preparing my lectures. I was preparing what I'm going to teach, which that was generally off the back of a really busy Sunday service. You know, we might be doing 90 for Sunday lunch, and then cleaning down Sunday afternoon, deep cleaning the kitchen, and then Sunday evening, I'm prepping a lecture ready for Monday morning. And this was just a rhythm, and it was a thing. It was just a treadmill that I was on for 3 years, and I couldn't really get off it. I was running this pub. We were doing great things. We were doing cookery schools. We were doing these music nights. You know, I was taking on the lots of different classes from lots of different age groups, with the catering, lecturing sort of side, and teaching young people how to cook healthily, which was really rewarding. But it was just constant. I couldn't stop. So I had this kind of goal of backing away, and rather than being salaried, of being a sort of a limited company that charged a day rate. And that was my goal, my aim. And I kind of garnered a bit of a reputation for the sort of the Cuban nights and the interesting stuff at the pub. So I was drawn into the city, you know, the bright lights of town, of London. And I worked with an interesting company. After the pub, left the pub, I launched what I call Gluggable Limited, which was a food and wine pairing sort of pop-up cookery school. And I took this into London, and we did a number of different events, and one was absolutely awesome. We managed to get funding from the Singaporean Tourist Board, and we hired a double railway arch. And we basically kitted out this railway arch with 6 rooms. And in each room, there was a theme. So one of them was a sort of a jungle theme. There was another that was a hawker's bazaar. There was another that was a sort of Singaporean dining room. And each room had its own drink. Each room had its own meal, so course on food. And each room had 2 actors in that were setting the scene and bringing these people in. And we managed to do this for 3 months, but we basically brought groups of 10 into each room. So you can imagine the logistics behind delivering this. You'd have 10 in the jungle scene with they were literally plucking fruit salads as their starter from a leaf, sort of from a tree, being talked to by these actors and consuming it whilst drinking their cocktail. And then 15 minutes, they were shuffled into room 2. I mean, behind the scenes was mad, because we were literally making sure that the right food, the right drink, and the right people were in each room and pushing them all the way through. So, you know, the first group were fine, but once you had a group in room 1, and then room 2, and then room 3, and obviously a group in every following room, and we'd be pushing through 90 to 100 people every night. It was good fun. I'll put it that way. It was good fun. So this, going back to this sort of dream of it wasn't a dream, it was a goal of shifting away from that treadmill, that 90-hour work week, onto sort of day rate consultancy. I still wasn't there. You know, to be totally honest with you, the reality was I was picking up projects. I was picking up, you know, 12-person dinner parties. I was picking up this cool Singaporean event. I was relief chefing You know, I was chefing at the White Post, a wonderful pub, like 2 or 3 days a week in Somerset. I actually picked up, Phoebe's here tonight, I picked up a 3-month gig covering for their head chef at the Natterjack. So that kind of goal for me, that day rate consultancy, was my ideal, but I was still taking a long time to get there. I was still pulling up hourly paid jobs, doing a lot of relief chefing, but I kind of had that in mind, and that was where I wanted to get to. And I was making progress with doing a little bit of product development, doing a little bit of these interesting projects and theme nights. And then 2015, I'd had 6 months of Gluggable, and all things were sort of going well. As I'd said, I was, in all honesty, I was doing a lot of relief chefing alongside the consultancy gigs and the day rates, but it was kind of piecing together with interesting projects. So it felt like I was moving in the right direction. But yeah, October 31st, 2015, after 6 months of this Gluggable Limited and this dream, I had lunch with my parents, who are here, which is very, very cool. But I had lunch with them and then went to join a friend to watch an England rugby game. And then in the evening, I planned to go to a Halloween party with my then girlfriend and now fiance, Phoebe Luckham. And I used to ride a motorbike, and I was tearing from place to place. So I'd had lunch with my folks, I'd gone to watch the rugby with mates, and then I was tearing to get from the rugby game to the Halloween party. And I actually had half of our costumes. So we were going to go as minions, Phoebe and I. Going to go as purple minions, and Phoebe had the dungarees, I had the face paints, I think I had the goggles as well in my panniers. I was, you know, I was an essential part of getting to this Halloween party and the two of us going together. But on the way there, I was running a little bit late, and I overcooked it a little bit, and it was dark and drizzly. October night. I don't know if any of you ride a motorbike, but when you get drizzle on your visor and you're sort of swiping it, trying to clear that rain away, I could sort of make out headlights going round, and I was between Wedmore and Shepton Mallet. And I remember it clear as day, even though it was night, but I could see this sort of stream of headlights panning off to the right, and I was being totally dazzled by these, you know, probably HID main beams coming from this Range Rover or whatever it was. I'm swiping my visor, and I'm probably going far too fast. But as I could make out these headlights drifting off to the right, I thought, right, it's a right bend. I can't see anything, but it's a right bend. So I veer to the left and dip in and commit for the corner. And as I commit for the corner, the Range Rover passes me and my visibility opens up. Oh, fuck. You know, that right bend is actually a one-way slip coming this way. And my lane veers off to the left. And so I've suddenly faced with this option, like oncoming traffic, big concrete bollard, or approach this sort of T-junction that's veering to the left. So I slammed the anchors on and basically aimed for the bollard. I didn't really know what else to do. It was a, you know, snap decision. So I hit the bollard, took flight. I actually ended up glancing a Volkswagen Passat and landing the other side of the road. And I'm like, and I remember landing and thinking, Christ, you know, I am a lucky son of a bitch. I should have died just then. I don't know how I'm still here. And I took my gloves off, and I opened my visor, and I took my glasses out, and I took my helmet off, and then I went to get up, and I was like, fuck. And it was like this searing heat, and I looked down, and the sole of my right boot is facing me. I can literally see the sole of my right boot. And at this point, loads of people are running over, and everyone's sort of panicked and a little bit scared. So I tried as best I could. I've done a little bit of first aiding, and I tried as best I could to sort of say, look, I'm okay. Can you ring me an ambulance? And everyone suddenly seems to sort of try and pin me down. And so I said, look, can you take my belt off? And I got confirmation that someone had rung me an ambulance, and I'm trying to take my belt off, and people are stopping me. And I sort of try and sort of shout out, look, can someone please take my belt and tourniquet my femoral artery? And I didn't know at the time, but the driver of the Passat that I'd glanced, he took his belt off and tourniqueted my leg. And I was incredibly lucky, and I still feel cool. I feel incredibly blessed to this day, because within 7 minutes, a paramedic turned up. And this sort of searing heat was sort of placated a little bit with some morphine, and just the acknowledgement that someone was there that knew what they were doing. Because before that point, it felt like headless chickens around me, and it felt like I had to take control. So having this paramedic turn up, I didn't know it was in 7 minutes, obviously. I wasn't timekeeping, but just looking at the police report, I knew it was 7 minutes. And I was incredibly lucky, because after 14 minutes, the ambulance turned up, and they whisked me away to Southmead Hospital in Bristol. And I don't remember much, but I remember parts of the sort of ambulance journey, and chatting with the guys and joking a little bit whether they needed a hand. But then I went into cardiac arrest on reaching Southmead in Bristol. So they ended up, I think, after realizing that I'd lost 7 or 8 pints of blood and gone into cardiac arrest, I think for the 3rd time, they induced a coma. So yeah, that's kind of where my memory ends. And then my memory sort of picks up again, waking up in ICU. And my friends and family coming towards me, and me just saying, "Wow, what a muppet! I fucked that up. Glad to be alive." And the more people that came in and talked to me, the more I realised that I actually had a bit of a difficult decision. I had to choose between reconstruction or amputation. They basically said that if you want to reconstruct, you're going to be in a frame for 12 months. We're going to have to take the traps out your back. Skin graft from everywhere. Might work, might not. Good luck. Or we amputate, and yeah, chances are you'll just be waiting for your pelvis to heal before you can get up and walk again. Because my femur, on impact, my femur had gone through my pelvis, so it smashed it into about 9-10 pieces. So after, I think, about 24 hours of deliberation, chose amputation, because they had enough to work with. They actually ended up using the sole of my foot as a skin graft on the end of my stump. And it meant that I kept the mobility in my arms, which for me was really important. So yeah, this brilliant, like, cool, I want to be this day rate consultant plan suddenly sort of evaporated, really. My focus shifted quite rapidly onto sort of nutrition for recovery and repair, and like, what do I need to do? How do I bounce back from this, guys? Help. So I did a lot of reading, as you can imagine. And I basically came across a lot of stuff on the sort of the 5 foundations of well-being. And it kind of resonated with me. And the 5 foundations are basically sleep, exercise and sort of movement, nutrition, which is really important, stress, awareness of self, and connection. And basically to be normal functioning human beings, you know, regardless of trauma, we really need these 5 pillars in our life. You know, we really need them. You know, we need to be making sure we're getting a good night's sleep. We need to be making sure we're moving. We need to be eating well. You know, a diverse mix of predominantly plant-based sort of foodstuffs. We need to be looking after ourselves and our stress, our fears and our anxieties. You know, we need to keep them in check. And we need connection. And connection's really important. I mean, really important. If you don't have a purpose and a why and a community of people around you that give you accountability for that why and that purpose and what you're doing day to day, that sort of daily rhythm roll that we all go through, you know, you might as well not have the others. You know, we need all 5 of these in balance, and connection is really up there and important, as they all are. They're all important. You know, you could be eating the best, most nutritious food in the world. If you are not sleeping, you're fucked. Quite frankly, you're not going to repair. Okay, so yeah, you know, you might have the odd bad night. You might have the odd takeaway. You know, you can knock a few of these pillars. Don't get me wrong. Like everything in moderation, including moderation, right? But you need to make sure you're balancing these 5 pillars. And after my accident, I sort of spent the next 6 months. Well, I had 2 months in hospital. I had 2 months in a wheelchair, and then I had about 3 months, or 2 or 3 months, learning to sort of walk again with a prosthesis. And that awareness of self and that sort of stress and anxiety and fear leveling was really important for me in that time, because you know, I'd gone from running maybe 10K twice a week and running marathons competitively for fun, to having to walk a mile for my physio. And there was this sudden disconnect between what I used to be able to do and what I was now able to achieve. And I had to really level and sort of draw a line under my past and start evaluating my performance from the here and now. So yeah, cool, okay, I can't no longer, you know, there's no way I'm running a 10K today, but I'm going to walk a mile. That's what I'm going to do. And by recording what I was doing and then referring back to what I'd done since my accident, I had this foundation, this sort of base to build off and to keep pushing. I got incredibly interested in the microbiome whilst I was looking at nutrition, incredibly interested in gut health. And please, by all means, if anyone's getting bored, like, do unmute yourself and ask a question, because I get bored of my own voice after like half an hour. So obviously part of those 5 pillars is nutrition. And I really started to read up a lot about what good nutrition was. And you know, long story short, and I'm happy to go deeper into this if anyone wants to, do shout. But we have this microbiome in our guts, and it's connected. Our endocrine system is connected via the vagus nerve to our brains. And basically, when we're eating, we're not really eating for ourselves. We're eating for this incredibly diverse set of bacteria that reside within our colon. And these bacteria are feeding on the foodstuffs that we're eating, and they're giving off chemical signals to us via the vagus nerve to our brain. And what's quite incredible is 9 out of 10 signals to the brain are from the endocrine system. I find that a little bit bonkers. So we've got this living thing within us, these trillions and trillions of different microbes that we're essentially feeding to then get back the energy that we require to function every day. And obviously, after doing all this sort of this focus on nutrition and recovery and repair post accident, I kind of tried to pick Gluggable back up again, and I ended up meeting up with this guy, really interesting chap, Satvinder Man, and Phoebe and I had moved to Leeds so that she could finish her undergraduate degree. And so we're in Leeds, and we met this guy called Sat, and he's basically saying, he was an athlete and he was in HR, and for his 9 to 5, he couldn't be asked in the evenings to do all this meal prep to get himself ready so that he was eating well at his lunchtime at his desk, and he was looking around at all the different offerings and saying, there's just nothing in Leeds. There's nothing. You could go to a Pret a Manger and have a sandwich, or you could go to a restaurant and have a slap-up meal, but that's very extravagant. One, it's expensive, and two, it's not ticking the boxes for feeding your microbiome. So, what's going on? So through several discussions, we decided we're gonna try and launch something that enable people to eat healthily. And we kind of started with why. We started with our shared values and common mission and purpose, which was to not only be good for the people and good for the gut microbiome, but also be good for the planet. So we looked at obviously models of working and how we were going to plan this out and how on earth it would work. So we ended up coming up with interesting sort of Buddha bowl style lunches that were in compostable packaging and then delivered by cargo bike. So we were trying to be end to end, and we decided to build an online website. So people could basically look at our 10-day menu, and say when they were in or out of the office and decide, whether we chose their meal or they did. But, it was a sort of nice frictionless website for people to log on to. And then we did the rest. So we had just-in-time sort of procurement policies whereby literally exactly what we needed came into the kitchen fresh that morning. Everything was chef prepared. We made sure that each meal was literally hand cooked and hand boxed and then handed to our own couriers on Dutch cargo bikes and cycled to the office. And we did really well. We ended up supplying over 75 different corporate offices within Leeds, and we managed to secure, it was self-funded by SAT initially, but we managed to secure investment 18 months in. And I've sort of messed up the timeline a little bit here, but I after sort of founding this or helping found Lean Lunch, one thing Phoebe and I wanted to do prior to moving to Leeds and prior to my accident was to go and work in the Alps for a little bit. So we decided after founding Lean Lunch, we decided just to take a bit of a sabbatical, and not being the wealthiest people, we definitely couldn't afford 6 months of skiing. So we took a chalet job. And it was absolutely awesome. So we had it nailed. Basically, we were delivering breakfast, afternoon tea, and dinner, like a 4-course dinner, to 12 different people in our chalet. And so we worked pretty hard from 7:15 till 9, make sure that we had breakfast ready, afternoon tea ready, just laid out, and then a little bit of dinner prepped up. We'd then ski from first lifts at 9 a.m. all the way through to the last lifts at 5, and then get back and do our sort of dinner party bit where we'd sort of entertain these 12 people. But we treated it very much like a dinner party, in that we were eating the same food, we were drinking the same wine, and we were sharing that experience and playing games and skiing with them as well. But we effectively took this sort of 6-month sabbatical. After spending 6 months working damn hard launching Lean Lunch, we then sort of effectively took 6 months off, which was wonderful. Because as an amputee as well, like if I'd have tried to do a 2 or 3 week ski holiday, it would have been absolutely useless and such a waste of money. Whereas getting paid to ski for 6 months was friggin' awesome. And after about 6 weeks, 7 weeks, 8 weeks, I finally had a handle on it, and I was sort of back up to speed and able to take on the reds and really enjoy it again, which was great. But yeah, I think a lot of my learnings through this sort of whole process, I was learning how much that sourcing played such a vital role in delivering high-end or decent food. You know, whether it was high-end, whether it was pub grub, whether it was on the slopes, you know, the sourcing of that food was absolutely key to the flavour and the end result of these plates. And we ended up returning to Leeds, and I was offered head of operations for Lean Lunch, which was ace, and it was great. I ended up wearing many hats, so I was between obviously writing policy and procurement and garnering new trade, to cooking the food, to product development, to occasionally taking out a cargo bike because we were a cyclist down, and so obviously I was on the cargo bike. I was effectively wearing many hats and just loving life. It was fast, it was furious, and really enjoyable. But I had this bugbear within me that we were cooking good food, and we were looking at the macros, and we were looking at, you know, obviously macros being fats, carbs, proteins. And then we're looking at the micros underneath that, all the different vitamins and minerals to make up these plates of food. But essentially our hands were tied. You know, we were dealing with what the suppliers were bringing in. And for me, there was such a big disparity between just a carrot, for example. You know, if you got a hydrocooled carrot from one supplier, it tasted like water. It tasted like, you know, it was naff. Whereas then actually you know, bought into the local community support and agriculture group that were doing things a little bit more regeneratively, a little bit more organically, you know, less chemical inputs, and you tasted their carrot. Geez, you know, the flavor was through the roof. So suddenly there's me taking these workshops and talking about, well, eat your veg. You know, I'm part of Lean Lunch. I'm running this thing. I'm enjoying the process that I've come through. And I'm delivering workshops on mindfulness and healthy eating. And I'm talking about eating your 5 a day, eating your 7 a day, like get loads of veg in. But actually, a carrot from here is not the same as a carrot from there. You know, and there was such a disparity between these vegetables that it really struck me. And so I decided to sort of dig a little bit deeper and start looking at agriculture. And I weighed up a lot of different options, whether to go to sort of hands-on experience and go and sort of get into agriculture, or whether to go and study for a little bit, and made the decision with Phoebe, my fiance, that actually going back in and doing a postgraduate degree was a good idea. So I've ended up going to the Royal Agricultural University to do a master's in innovation in food and well, basically to try and innovate on ways to disrupt our unsustainable food system. Because it is bonkers, the amount of chemical inputs that are going into growing our food. And yes, we can look at organic certification, which is great because suddenly that lifts those chemicals away and gives you this contaminant-free vegetable. But what it doesn't do is actually talk about the nutrient density of that vegetable. So going back to those two carrots, you know, one that tasted like water and one that tasted absolutely fabulous, you know, that carrot full of flavonoids and full of taste was chock full of nutrients. And we've been so gifted with this, you know, organoleptic tool we have right here, our nose and our taste buds. We have the absolute best measure for nutrient density. So yeah, I've decided to swim upstream and learn a lot about agriculture and take these next 2 years to chill and reflect. And what I've realized early on, I mean, I'm only 3 months in, are the parallels between the gut microbiome and the healthy gut that leads into all manner of different positives from a human perspective. And the soil microbiology, you know, if we're looking at healthy soils, there is a distinct link, you know, a real correlation between soil quality and crop quality. And that crop quality then spins into human health and the quality of the microbiome, the nutrients we're taking from these plants. So the next 2 years, I've very much decided to sort of focus my efforts on almost sort of mapping out my PhD, because this is far bigger than I am, and this next 2 years of research at master's level is that, you know, I really want to close the loop. So soil quality boiling into crop quality, and then the human health aspects and how that affects how we think and how we feel. You know, that connection we spoke about, you know, the microbiome linked via the vagus nerve to the brain, you know, and actually then we have far much more, if we're looking after those three things, we have far much more capacity to care for the earth if we are looking after our own gut microbiome. So yeah, basically I feel a little bit like a fraud. I feel like I've kind of got imposter syndrome, because Fiona sold you this as this sort of serial entrepreneur, when really all I've done is follow my stomach for the last 2 decades. So it's that's basically my journey and where I'm at now. And it's been an absolute pleasure sharing it with you. But I'd love to open it up to anyone. If anyone has any questions, then please fire away.
Oh, well, thanks, Dave, for you know, a really open and honest and extremely engaging talk, and to see how, you know, one's past absolutely informs designing your own future, you know, is one of the most inspiring things, and it's one of the most honest ways I think you can, you, in my view anyway, you can live your life. And so thank you for sharing that with us. And in terms of putting this in the context of service personnel who are looking for the next thing, for me it really resonates, because the great problem that besets the transition from military life to civilian life is working out one's identity. Yeah. And you know, what you have described can be seen as through a lens of realizing in a couple of cases that you're on the wrong path, and in another case having it taken away from you, and then, you know, bringing some character to bear to build that back again. So that's really very powerful and quite moving as well. So thank you very much for being so open and honest. I've got loads of little things I'd like to ask you, but I'll give other people an opportunity to do that. I know that Rupert feels he ought to be spending more time with his family, and wasn't going to stay much longer than this. So I'll just give him the first opportunity to shout in case he's about to leave us.
Your ESP is obviously working very well, Fiona. I've got the delicious smells of home produced food, and I mean that in every sense. But no, thank you for that. I'm always interested in other people. I'm interested in in why other people are here and what stage they're at. And Fiona knows this. We've done a bit of mentoring and a bit of support, both to academic types. We have UNESCO Biosphere certification for our product, which is pretty unique, but also just those thinking about breaking into rural life. So no, I'm keen to listen rather than to speak.
Awesome. Well, I kind of had a number of things for sort of mapped out in terms of little habits and things that I'd formed, but I didn't feel it was the right the right time to share. I mean, there's a lot of interesting stuff going on in agriculture that I've suddenly been made aware of over the last sort of 3 or 4 months, and I'm very happy to sort of share connections and interesting things that are going on within agriculture that might be of interest to veterans coming through and obviously doing that change and that shift into civilian life.
Do you believe that I watch YouTube because it's something to do, and I watch a young person called Cole the Corn Star, who's a 22-year-old Iowa farmer.
Okay.
And they do corn and they do soybeans, and they rotate the fields, so they get the legumes and work them through. But they're very much into having companies coming out and re-pHing their fields. So they'll literally go through, take soil samples throughout a whole field system, and then come back, and literally over the winter, even with the snow on the ground, they've literally put down like chalk where it's high pH or high acid, so they can balance everything out again.
Yeah.
Do you think that that's a promising way of getting higher yields in the current agricultural economy?
I think pH is really important. I think actually looking at mycorrhizal activity. So, I mean, as we spoke about in the microbiome, you've got this, trillions of different microbes, and diversity is key. It's the same for soil. There are such parallels, and it's weird and wonderful how, I've gone through this journey looking at the microbiome, and now I'm going through this journey looking at soil, because the more diverse the microbes are within the soil structure, the more resilient that plant is. And it's the same for human health. The more diverse our microbiome is, the more resilient we are to pathogens. If you imagine sort of a petri dish, if you've got 1 or 2 different bacteria in there, and a pathogen comes in or a viral infection comes in, it's really easy for it to sweep through the entire petri dish. And it's exactly the same for our microbiome and the soil, in that if its diversity is up, and there are thousands of trillions of different microbes within that place, as soon as anything like a pathogen or a pest or a viral infection comes in, it's got to compete so hard with everything else that's already in there that it struggles, and it's more likely to wither and die. And one thing that's been really interesting for me looking at sort of soil biology is the fact that and this is a little bit of a sort of a touchy subject, is the fact that we've been treating the symptoms for so long. We're applying chemical fertilizers, and then applying fungicides and applying herbicides, treating these symptoms. And actually, we need to push all that to one side and start looking at building resilience, soil up. Because as soon as you have that mycorrhizae and the wealth of different microbes within the soil, the plant is more resilient. The soil is more resilient. I mean, the soil itself becomes a sponge. And if the soil is a sponge, through all these different lasagnaed layers of sort of composting and no-till methodology, where you're sort of layering it up. Were they no-till, the guys you were talking about, that are changing the pH?
The other thing they've done is the no-till.
Fab.
Basically, they cut the corn down,
yeah,
and then everything just stays on the top of the surface.
Yeah, that's perfect.
And then for the next year, they just start hoeing. They make the hoe lines to put the corn in, to the seeds in, and then put it down. But as I say, I've just started watching him because I was homeless August 20 to now.
Wow.
Well, up until March this year, or last year, August 19 to March 20. So the COVID's totally thrown me out.
It's thrown everyone out.
Yeah, well, I had a job. I started a job at the beginning of March, lost it at the end of April. And then I've had another one. I started another one today or this week, working at an egg. I'm currently packing eggs at a battery farm, and I've wrecked my fingers.
Oh,
So
no.
I'm waiting for the doctors to give me antibiotics because I've got loads of infection in my fingers. But it's crazy. I'm just doing anything to keep myself going.
Well done for just keeping at it.
Yeah. I just turn up. I'm enthusiastic. Anything I do. I was working before Christmas. I was helping a company called Flavorworks, making stuff from your little pâtés of garlic butter that you put inside a chicken Kiev, through to making a spiced marmalade with cinnamon and stuff, and getting these massive tubs of marmalade and re-putting in loads of ingredients and loads more glycerin, and then heating it up, cooling it down, putting in sachets and packing it off. This one company had I think we got.
If you're particularly interested in in trying to take this and develop yourself and opportunities within regenerative agriculture, it might be something we could talk about, because there are plenty of opportunities. If it's something you're interested in doing, and perhaps we could.
Well, the reason I came in on this was the fact that when I was a child, I worked on a farm. I used to work on a mixed farm, so it had a bit of arable. It used to bring on calves, and do things like that. And it's something that's why I came onto this meeting today, just thinking about going back into that industry.
Ian, if you want, I've just popped my mobile in chat.
Thank you.
If you want to have just a chat at some point this week, then just drop me a line.
Yeah,
whenever you feel it, because it'd be really nice just to talk through. There's a wealth of opportunity in agriculture and catering as well. So we can talk through different things that you're interested in. I think that's a really important starting place. Is looking at things that you find interesting.
Thank you. So Rupert had his hand up.
Yeah, it's just, Ian, I don't know where you are in the country, but the long and the short of it is agriculture's proved really robust during everything that's been going on during the last 12 months. In every sense, we produce something that people can't do without, that is food.
That's
and, a dairy unit has to milk cows twice a day, 365 days of the year, regardless. Here in Scotland, we've had particular issues about, the seasonal workforce required, which also, of course, is extended with polytunnels and the rest of it in terms of, the managing of that, in the Angus Glens, some fantastic soft fruit producers with, the combination of Brexit and the rest of it. So the long and the short of it is I've got a role at the National Farmers Union Scotland as well. I mean, agriculture is crying out for people that I would characterize, you've described yourself as happy to get your hands dirty and happy to just crack on day in, day out. And, very keen to support Fiona's efforts to get people into agriculture, appreciating I might not be geographically handy for you, but that is the case.
I'm at a position at the moment in life where I'll go wherever I need to go.
Whereabouts are you, Ian? Where are you now?
Not far from where you used to be. I'm down just south of Shepton Mallet.
Oh wow! Okay.
I'm in Gillingham.
Yeah, cool.
So yeah, I'm down in. I'm right in the top of Dorset, in North Dorset.
Let's have a I mean, do take people up on their offer, but I spend my whole time nowadays talking to people who want to exploit new opportunities, and if you want to have a conversation about what opportunities there are, then links I've got, I'm very happy to do that as well. So please do follow up. I'm really glad you've come here, and I hope you've enjoyed it as well.
I've really enjoyed it. I mean, my ex-wife, my first wife, did a PhD on the effects of ozone on the growth cycle. So she did that at Lancaster University.
Fantastic.
So it actually shows that if you get ozone earlier on in the growing season, so February, March time, you'll actually give it a boost. But then it lags off later on in the season, and it actually has a detrimental effect. Too much ozone later on in the season.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that's what our conclusions were.
Yeah.
So yeah, 3 years. She did that. So, but no, I grew up all right between Hemel Hempstead, Watford, and St Albans in the rural bit between the three towns. And as I say, we had mixed farms. So we had the Ovaltine Dairy Farm, which they put the M25 right way through the middle of. The pastures for that. That was a massive award-winning herd of about 500, 600 cows. The Ovaltine factory is still there, but they had to get new pastures. And then, as I say, I worked on the Sims's farm, where they had cattle and beef stock, so just steers and stuff ready to go. And then they had some fields over where I lived, which is about 3 miles away as the crow flies, about 7 miles away if you went by all the roads. So they used to leave a tractor, and when I used to go home from school, I used to look after those 2 fields for them.
Brilliant.
So I used to plough them down. We did sugar beet one year. That was hard. They had to hire in a sugar beet lifter. That was an interesting, because the field wasn't doing that well with the wheat. So
Ian, let's carry on this this conversation. We can carry it on now, but I'm just conscious that I'd like to turn the recording off for this and just put a break in here. So if I may, let me just again thank David very much, and what is left of his support crew. I will be editing this down, as I said. I've just turned off the recording now.